Alright, so this video includes a video about another method for factoring, the box method. Then I'm also going to include an example of one of the problems from the homework that some people struggle with. I want to include that in this discussion. So here we are. We're going to look at that other trinomial that we factored before, but we're going to do it in a different way. Again, it is a trinomial that has a leading term that is not 1. So again, we have A, B, and C. We find AC again. And remember, we look for terms in AC that are factors of AC that also sum to the middle term, -19. So we look at our factors of AC, which is 60k squared. And we look in here, and we see that 4 and 15, when we have -4k plus -15k, we get -19k. So we found our two factors. But this is using the box method here. So what we create here is a box. Okay? Now we put the first term in the upper left-hand corner and the last term in the lower right-hand corner, as we say here. First term in the upper left, last term in the lower right. So we've done that. Remember, we found our necessary factors were -15k and -4k. Now we put those in the remaining squares. Now, just so you're aware, we could have put -4k here and -15k here, but just remember that you put them in the remaining squares, and you can put them in any order. It'll still work out. So what we're going to do here is we find the greatest common factor of each row and each column. So here, notice we took out, in this column here, we took out the greatest common factor between -15k and 10, which is -5. By the way, and I'll emphasize this here in a little bit later, I take the sign of the term closest to the outside of the box. In this case, it's -15k. So we take on a negative sign here. All right. Now we took out the greatest common factor out of this column between 6k squared and -4k, which is 2k. Then we took out the greatest common factor out of this row here, between -4k and 10. And notice again, I've taken the sign of the term closest to the outside of the box. Since it's -4k, I make it -2. Then I take out the greatest common factor out of this row, which is 3k. So notice again, I just have a little note there. Make sure you always take the sign of the term closest to the outside of the box. So what we have here, we have just factored this using an alternate method called the box method. Notice we have 2k minus 5 up here and 3k minus 2 right here. So this is just another method to do this. Now, just so you know, you can use any method that you prefer. It's just sometimes I include this because a lot of students are taught this way, and I include this discussion as a refresher. So now we'll look at one more of these using the box method. This time I'm given -10m squared minus 9m plus 22. What's the first thing we do when we have a leading coefficient that's negative? Remember, we factor out a -1. Remember to always factor out a -1 when your leading term is negative. So we calculate AC and we get -220. We list the factors of AC. Now remember, we're looking for a factor of AC, factors of AC that not only give us a product of AC, but also sum up to the middle term. And since we have a plus and a minus here, it indicates that it's going to be subtraction occurring. So looking at these things, it looks like 11 and 20 are going to do it, because that's going to get us 20 minus 11 equals 9m. So we found the two factors. So we put in the first term in the upper left-hand corner of the box. We put in the last term in the lower right-hand corner of the box. We put in the necessary factors into the remaining boxes. Remember, you can put these in any order. It'll still work out in any order. As, for example, we could have put 20m up here and negative 11m here. It still would have worked out. But we put the necessary factors into the remaining two boxes. So I'm taking out the greatest common factor out of this row, which is m. Then I take out the greatest common factor out of this row, which is 2. And notice I'm taking the sign of the term closest to the outside of the box, which is positive. Now here I take out the greatest common factor out of this column, which is 10m. Then I take out the greatest common factor out of this column here, which is negative 11. Remember, I use the sign of the term closest to the outside of the box, negative 11m, so I take out negative 11. So I've just factored this trinomial here. Negative m plus 2, 10m minus 11. Now I wanted to include this particular problem in this because a lot of times students have a hard time understanding what's going on with this particular problem. But it's really not that hard when you think about it, because they give us a big hint here. All we've got to do is find the last factor of this. It looks a little complicated, but really it's not too bad. Notice what is given. They've taken out a 2. So what they've done here is divide the entire polynomial by 2. So 64s squared divided by 2 is 32. 136sg divided by 2 is 68sg. 42g squared divided by 2 is 21g squared. And that's given here. It's given that they divided it by 2. So what else is given is this 4s plus 7g part. So using our knowledge of factoring here, we can figure out what the remaining term is going to be. One, we've got a positive and a positive here. So that means that there's going to be a positive in the two binomials that are created. So I went ahead and put a positive here. I've just got to figure out what goes in these blanks now. So what you do is ask yourself here, 4s times what would give me the first term of 32s squared? I'm just using my knowledge of FOIL here, right? 4s times what would give me 32s squared? And if you think about it, that is 8s here. We could divide 32s squared by 4s as well to get this 8s. So we put 8s there. Now we're going to ask ourselves, 7g times what would yield the last factor here? The last term, I'm sorry. The last term, 21g squared. So I ask myself, 7g times what would give me 21g squared? And that would be 3g. I could divide 21g squared by 7g, and I would get 3g. So I put in the 3g there. So then I've just factored this. Now this is one way to approach this problem. Now, however, one student once asked me, well, how would I do this if I wasn't given these hints? So I'm going to show you, again, the long way of going about doing this if you weren't given these hints. The first thing I would notice when I came across this trinomial is that it has a common factor of 2. I can take out a 2 out of each one of these terms. So that's the first thing I would do. Take out a 2 out of each one of these terms. Then I would get 21w squared, 20wz, and 4z squared. Now I'd look at the factors of the first, and the factors of the last. Remember, I'm looking at these things, and I'm trying to figure out which combination of these will give me numbers that will add up to 20. So we have to think about this a little bit here. If we look at this very closely, these will work because 3 times 2 is 6, 7 times 2 is 14, 6 plus 14 gets us to 20. Remember, addition is occurring in this case because we got 2 positives here. So the binomials are going to be positive. So we can rewrite our middle term here as 14wz plus 6wz equals 20wz. So that's what we do next. We rewrite our expression here, rewriting the middle term. Now remember, once I've rewritten the middle term, what I do is group the expression, because I'm going to factor by grouping, right? Using the AC method. So here I've put it into 2 groups, right? With the parentheses. So then I would take out the greatest common factor out of each group. So I take out a 7w in the first group. And then I take out a 2z in the second group. Notice I've created this common term of 3w plus 2z. So now I would take out that 3w plus 2z. And there I've just factored that. Now, as I said, you don't have to do it this way. I just am including how you would do something like that without the hints. But in the previous example, right? In the previous example, I showed you how to do this by just using the hints. You ask yourself, if I have 4s times what to get 32s, right? And then I end up with 8s. Then I ask myself, 7g times what would give me 21g squared, and I'm with 3g. So I can just use that method there, using the hints to get by. This is just a homework problem to get through, but it just helps us to understand factoring a little bit more, and we think about the FOIL process.